Guys, welcome to another episode of MTG Brewery. We know it's been a while, but we've been extremely busy. But this week we're just going to bring you some deck techs. We can't really sit down for some versus videos, but hopefully you'll enjoy them. We're going to start off with a deck that's been around the past two standards, kind of on the fringes of last standard, never really broke out, and was a dominated standard before that, an Innistrad standard, is Junk Reanimator. I still think the deck is very powerful and can do some very obscenely unfair things when built right. I don't think I quite have it down yet, but I'm certainly trying, and this is my current version of it, slightly different from the article I posted about it a couple weeks ago, but it's pretty close. So let's just get right into it. We do have one Necropolis Fiend. I'm a big fan of this card. It is a 4/5 for 9 with Delve. Tap X in it. Exile X cards from your graveyard. Target creature gets -X/-X. It's certainly extremely graveyard intensive for a card, but with Commune with the Gods, Satyr Wayfinder, and other dig spells in our deck, we can consistently pay 4 or 5 mana for this and cast it on turn 4 or 5. And a 4/5 flyer on those turns is pretty good. It blocks Sarkhan, it blocks Stormbreath Dragon, and lives through both of those very well. And can just kind of act as removal as the game goes later for bigger creatures, where you're just going to be filling your graveyard up anyway. Not to mention, it can just start attacking for 4, and with Whip of Erebos, giving this thing lifelink is never that bad. There's 4 Ashen Riders, still very much love this card. Main Reanimator target, being able to enter, and when it dies, against most decks, it will get 2 triggers minimum if you cast it or reanimate it with like an Endless Obedience Rescue from the Underworld. Outside of the Abzan deck, not a lot of decks can handle this with the Exile, and even then, the other ones are blue-black with Perilous Vault, which you can Ashen Rider Perilous Vaults, or you can just not play into it with more than one Ashen Rider, so that's not a problem. Or Banishing Light, but you can also kill Banishing Lights to get back your Ashen Rider, so that's never really a good answer. So Ashen Rider is just kind of a nice resistant threat. It's a 5/5 flyer, 5/5 flyer. It's always been very relevant when I've played this card that is a flying and 5 power and 5 toughness. For some reason, I don't know why, but those stats are very good on a flyer in standard, even at 8 mana. So even when I'm just hardcasting this, it can just turn around the game from just being hardcast, which I find odd for 8 mana, but it can. So I really enjoy that aspect of it too. Just have one Hornet Queen, there should probably be a second one. This card is can do very shenanigan-y things. It can quickly turn around any board state and a creature matchup in your favor. And then when you can start reanimating it, or Whip of Erebos it into play, it gets even better as the Sidisi Whip decks have been doing, and the Green-Black Devotion decks have been doing. This deck does that very well. One Arbor Colossus, just for a card like Stormbreath Dragon, that's a very tough card for this deck to beat. Outside of Hornet Queen, Arbor Colossus, and the 2 of Murderous Cut, we have no real interest to it. And we have Arbor Colossus to block if it doesn't monstrous before we can monstrous Arbor Colossus. But Arbor Colossus also just serves as a 5 mana 6/6. It's just a big ground guy. And a lot of matchups, just having a big ground guy is going to be huge. With Whip of Erebos, this can just serve as a 6/6 lifelink against a deck like Mono Red, which is one of our worst matchups. This card can do a lot of work. And Jeskai, their Manus Riders can never profitably attack into an Arbor Colossus. So this also helps us with that matchup, which is also kind of 50-50. So we definitely wanted one Arbor Colossus in the main and some more on the board. We have 3 Siege Rhinos. This card is kind of a mainstay in all the junk decks. Junk aggro plays it, like the Abzan aggro decks and Abzan midrange. They both play this card as a 4. We're only playing 3. We wanted our slots are kind of fought over for our fatties, but it certainly serves a lot of purposes. Being able to reanimate it multiple times, Whip of Erebos, our Siege Rhinos into play can be very swingy in aggro matchups. Not to mention, it's just a solid body, so it's definitely proven its worth in standard. 4 Satyr Wayfinders, 2 mana for a 1/1, so it gets to block early. In the Mono Red matchup, once again our worst matchup. And it digs 4 cards. Hopefully it gets us to land, it doesn't always, but it normally will. And just continues to allow you to hit your land drops, which is going to be very important in the early game. We have 1 Sylvan Carrot and 3 Elvish Mystic as our ramp. They both have their merits. Elvish Mystic does come down at 1. Can allow you to play a tap land on turn 2 if you played an Elvish Mystic on turn 1, and still be able to play a 2-drop. But Sylvan Carrot is at 3 with Hexproof. I'm not really sure which one is better in this deck, but they both just serve the same purpose as being able to fill a mana ramp row. And then we get to our non-creature spells. Our first reanimation spell is 2 Whip of Erebos. We should, honestly, after testing with this deck, probably up the number of Whip of Erebos to 3 or 4. The card is so vital in so many matchups. 2 has been Honestly, I just want to draw this more often, and 2's just not been consistent enough for me, so I'm probably going to add some more. And being able to reanimate repeatedly is a very good thing in a deck that just wants to reanimate. With so for Endless Obedience, the new reanimation spell out of the core set hasn't really seen a ton of play. It does allow Satyr Wayfinder to become a mana dork, which is very nice. I mean, just one time, but still, when you can go turn 2 Satyr Wayfinder, turn 3 Elven Sacred Sylvan Caryatid, turn 4 Endless Obedience in an Ashen Rider, happens quite a bit. It's very good. Even just Endless Obedience in Hornet Queen or any of our other fatties is going to be very good. So Endless Obedience, not the best of reanimation spells, but definitely necessary for this deck to function. Then 4, Scout the Borders. My friend played this deck at a tournament this past weekend. Got top 4, split with everyone else, got $50 cash. I asked him what the biggest weakness of the deck was. He said the worst card in the deck was Scout the Borders, and I agree with him. Me and him both, when we've played this deck, have just always sideboarded out Scout the Borders. So let's probably become a card like Nyx Weaver Spider. It's a 2/3 with reach for 1 green black. Mills you for 2 at your upkeep. And you can pay 1 green black and exile it to return a card from your grave to your hand. So it can get Whip of Erebos if you happen to mill it. It can still grab lands if you really need to grab some lands. It can grab a fatty and put in your hand if you can't find a reanimation spell. It's just a lot more versatile. It makes us our sideboard a lot better because we can put our non-creature spells in our hand. And Scout the Board is just kind of awful. It's no Grizzly Salvage, being 3 mana at sorcery speed. And I just really, for some reason, don't like it. There's 4 Commune with the Gods, though. I do like this. It is 1 in a green. Reveals top 5s, just like Scout the Borders. But it puts creature or enchantment, so it can grab Whip of Erebos and sideboarded Banishing Lights, which is a huge deal that this can grab enchantments. It's never like Scout the Borders flip over lands and Whip of Erebos, which feels awful with Scout the Borders, but when you do it with Commune with the Gods, it feels awesome because you get to grab that Whip of Erebos. Commune with the Gods won't miss nearly as much as Scout the Borders will, pretty much only missing with lands and instants. So this is definitely awesome. It's also 2 mana, which is a huge deal. We have a lot of tap lands, so we do want to be able to play something a little bit early. We have 1 Rescue from the Underworld. Our Scout the Borders are probably going to become 3 Spiders and 1 Rescue. We've also been wanting... This other, sorry guys. His other assessment of the deck was there wasn't enough reanimation, which is why we want to add more one more Rescue from the Underworld probably, and another Whip of Erebos to the deck. Just have a little bit more reanimation and consistency to allow our obscene draws to be a lot more obscene and our fair draws to be just as fair. So hopefully that can work. When this gets countered, though, if blue decks are super popular, you definitely do not want too many Rescue from the Underworld, because when they counter Rescue, you feel awful. Even if you did somehow get an Ashen Rider triggered off of it, it's still not going to feel very good. There are 2 Murderous Cut as our go-to removal spell. Destroy target creature. In this deck, essentially 1 black, because when you go... If you go turn 1 Elvish Mystic, turn 2 Commune, or Satyr Wayfinder, you can then represent Murderous Cut with 1 land, just because it has the 1 black mana symbol and Delve. There's definitely plenty of times you'll have a bunch of lands and instant in your graveyards which do absolutely nothing for you, and Murderous Cut can use those. We do have 1 Abzan Charm. If you don't know the modes on it, it is draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, or distribute 2+1/+1 counter 2+1/+1 counters among any number of creatures you control, or exile target creature with power 3 or greater. Like I said, the biggest problem for this deck is cards like Stormbreath Dragon. Sarkhan follows shortly behind it. This can answer Sarkhan, but it can definitely not kill Stormbreath Dragon. And Stormbreath Dragon sees just as much play as Sarkhan, but is a lot harder for this deck to deal with. We can block Sarkhans with Ashen Riders. We can exile them with Ashen Riders. We cannot do that with Stormbreath Dragon. So this is probably just going to become a 3rd Murderous Cut, just because there's not that many Delve cards in our deck, so we don't really have to fight over too many Delve cards. So, just another weakness in the deck that we found. Stormbreath Dragon's a huge deal. Abzan Charm is probably going to get moved to the sideboard for a 3rd main deck Murderous Cut. But then we have our mana base. 1 Plains, 2 Swamps, 3 Forests as the basics, and then a bunch of dual lands. As you can see, we have an awful lot of coming to play tap lands. We're probably going to cut some tap lands for some Windswept Heaths, but other than that, the mana base is pretty good. Maybe add some Llanowar Waste as well. So that's our main deck, guys, and we'll see you in a second for the sideboard. The sideboard, we'll get right into it. Though, this note, sideboard is awful. It's a lot of theory crafting, as I haven't been able to do any pretty much standard playing for the past 2 months, other than the occasional Versa video we've been able to get out. But here's the sideboard we do have. The 1 card I knew I wanted in the sideboard was Resolute Archangel. It is a 7 mana 4/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if your life total is less than your original life total, it becomes equal to your starting life total. That does mean gaining life, so if there's some card in Standard that comes out that stops you from gaining life, it will stop the Resolute Archangel trigger, but I don't think there's anything that does that in Standard now. So in most cases in Standard, you will just go back to 20 life. And if you whip a Varabosted into play, you get to attack for 4 and go to 24. Against a Jeskai tempo deck, which like I said, is pretty 50-50 matchup, this is going to swing that game around real fast. And against Mono Red, normally resetting your life total to 24 if you have a Whip of Erebos, like I said, it's going to be a huge game changer and can quickly put the game in your favor. But other than that, you don't really want it. Sometimes you just want a 4/4 flyer, but not often. Born Overlord, it is a 7-mana 6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you get a number of 1/1 black Harpy flying creature tokens equal to your devotion to black onto the battlefield. At your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. This card is mainly for control matchups. Making a bunch of Harpies is going to be very good. Being able to sacrifice, if you have a Whip of Erebos in play, sacrifice some of your bigger, like Ashen Riders, Hornet Queens, and being able to get multiple triggers out of them, or even just sacrificing the Overlord himself and reanimating him, it can swing a game in a control matchup very quickly. Or even just kind of the Abzan matchup, which is really bad. Having a card like a Born Overlord can help out in that matchup a lot, because Wingmate Rock is their best card against us, and this just makes a bunch of blockers. 2 more Arbor Colossus, like I said, Stormbreath Dragon's a big deal. So having more Arbor Colossus is where we want to be in that matchup. And that's kind of all that really does. There's one Doomig Giant, basically for the mono-red slide deck with a bunch of X1s, where this is going to be able to kill them. You can Crone Crusader, Dragon Mantle deck, other Frenzied Goblin, Foundation in that deck. You definitely want Doomig Giant in that matchup, because you can just play this as early as turn 3 sometimes, normally turn 4, turn 5, and it will wrath their board. Plus, with Whip of Erebos, it will trigger. If you whip it into play, it still gets its trigger, and you get to attack. So, in that matchup, you definitely want access to at least one Doomig Giant, maybe 2. Then there's one Reaper of the Wilds. Once again, the grindier Abzan matchups, control matchups. Just a creature that's really hard to deal with. Can kill Siege Rhinos because it can gain Death Touch. And being able to scry in the Abzan matchup when creature dies can happen an awful lot. As well as against aggro decks, it is just a very efficient blocker that is hard for them to deal with. There's also 4 Banishing Lights. You can grab those with Commune with the Gods, so they're just removal spells. And the mono-red matchup, you don't always want to be on the reanimation plan. You will honestly sideboard out some of your reanimation and some of your dig, just so you can bring in removal spells to actually be able to manage their board, because there's not a lot of ways to interact with it outside of blocking in Game 1. And if you didn't know, Frenzied Goblin and Hammer Hand make blocking hard sometimes. Our final cards are just 2 more Abzan Charms, 2 Silence Believers. The theory behind these was you just want to sideboard into a mid-range deck sometimes against the mono-red decks. I honestly don't think I really want to do that, so these are probably coming out for more creatures, maybe some more enchantments that are cool, that can do things in certain matchups. But they could potentially be good if Standard changes a little. Right now, Abzan's a big deal, Jeskai's a big deal, and it looks like the Jeskai Heroic combo deck might be a big deal. These aren't amazing in those matchups. Silence Believers are good in the Abzan matchup, but that's it. Abzan Charm is semi-good in the Abzan matchup, that's it. It's not really good in the other matchups. So maybe something like Reclamation Sages should be added to the sideboard or something. So, that's the notes on the deck that me and my friend have made, and the makeshift sideboard and main deck we have until changes come. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We're sorry it took us so long to come out with another video, but hopefully we can start coming out with them consistently alongside my articles that go with them. So we'll just see how that goes. As usual, guys, you can find me on Twitter at Pearsallsblog. You can find my articles on mtgbrodeals.com, where the content is awesome. They normally have daily content every day of the week except for Sunday, I believe. So there will be something there pretty much every day of the week for you to go read there from the other authors on the site. And you can email us, pearsallsblog@yahoo.com. Don't be afraid to email us anything, comments about the deck you don't want to put out on the Twitter sphere or YouTube, deck ideas, cards you want us to build around, things like that. We will respond, and as soon as we can, and we'll definitely try to do things like that. As usual, guys, as well, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.